Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the culture shocks and cultural observations I've made throughout my time in South Korea now. I've been living here for almost a month, and I think a month is a good time to talk about some of these things. We've been out almost every day talking to people from different generations and sort of learning about the culture here. So this video is more like maybe a Westerner's experience of South Korea, but I've traveled to all of the continents in the world, and I think over 50 or 60 countries now. So I'd just like to share my thoughts and opinions on visiting South Korea. So before here, we came from the Philippines, which is a very different experience. Now, the Filipinos love the family, the friends, a very community vibe. They like sharing. So it's a very big culture shock coming from somewhere like the Philippines. I have no idea where I am, but I'm going to try and go that way. So we're in a Korean forest right now. And I think the first thing I want to talk to is perhaps related to the forest here, is that I don't see any young people here. I'm not really sure why, but I've done a lot of the trails here. I've been up a lot of the mountains. And coming up to the first thing is I've noticed a lot of old people are very active here, and they seem to be the ones doing these trails here. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's a generational thing, but the old people here like to be very, very active. They like hiking. I've hiked up some huge mountains after maybe running for 8 kilometers, and there were 7 or 8 old people at the top. I've seen outdoor gyms scattered all around the forest. I've even seen loose dumbbells there, and it's always the older people working out there, people perhaps who have left their jobs behind and retired. So maybe it's a sort of thing where you're working too much and now you can start living, something like that. But definitely being old, when you're old, you haven't given up. In the UK and America, for example, when you turn 65, 66, you've retired from work, maybe you have 1 or 2 good years of vacationing. And now it's almost like you just go to the shop every day, walk your dog, and it's almost like you've given up. I don't see too many people learning new activities, new hobbies. It does happen. But in a general point of view, it's almost like people give up. Being in South Korea, I see a lot of inspiration from the old people. They're out exercising, climbing hills, doing absolutely amazing things, lifting weights, using all the cardio equipment in the gyms. So it's a very different experience from the older generation. They're very active and hiking a lot. Yeah, so the second thing I want to talk about is the younger people, and that's more tied to maybe the usage of electronic devices, for example. So when I first arrived here, we took the subway, the train, into the city. And the weird thing I noticed was the train was quite busy. There was people in all the seats, there was people standing up. And everybody was on their phone, but not just their phone, they had headphones in. It was quite quiet. Even people sitting together who came together, they weren't talking, they were just lost in their phone. And I'm thinking, oh, this is really weird. I've seen it a bit in Los Angeles, but even then there's a bit of a split, you know. You still have people kind of raw dogging it a little bit, just like watching out the window, watching the world go by as you travel on the train, perhaps talking to a friend or family or something like that. But I've noticed it's a culture very dependent on electronic devices, especially even off the train as well. Walking down the road, for example, they'll be using their phone, just not really looking where they're going. And that mosquitoes love the lens there. But because people are so ingrained and engrossed in their electronic devices, it's actually quite hard to talk to people and meet people. And these are people maybe 40 years old and lower. So it's almost like as the generation gets older, the usage of the electronic devices is less and less. But I think that's not really to do with the age, but more with the familiarity of the phone, and when the smartphone was almost released in the early 2000s, so perhaps that could be the reason. I imagine in 20, 30 years we're going to see everyone doing the same thing. So it's just one of those things. But it is quite hard to meet people here, and especially coming from Southeast Asia, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, where people are quite friendly. They want to know your story, where you're from, share some experiences. It feels quite lonely, a very lonely experience. It's hard to meet people, it's hard to meet friends, it's hard to have activities. It just seems everyone's very engrossed in their own things, their own phones, perhaps their work, for example. And yeah, it just seems a bit lonely, to be honest. But that's one of the very first things I observed when visiting South Korea. Okay, the third thing I want to talk about is the prices. The prices here, very, very expensive, very expensive. So if you're in the UK, for example, people say London is expensive. But in London, you can go to Zone 3, to Camden, you have a Poundland where everything is a pound. Well, some things are a pound now. You have Tesco and Sainsbury's where you can still get a triangle sandwich for around £1.29 for the most basic one. And then up from there, you can get meal deals, you can get buy one, get one frees. So London, yes, it's expensive in Zone 1, right by the tourist attractions, but we have some sort of areas you can go to. They're very easily found. There's lots of chain stores, and even some of the convenience stores have things with price marks on. And when it has a price mark on the product, you cannot legally charge higher than that price. So even in some expensive convenience stores, you can still find some bargains and still stay there relatively cheaply. If you want to stay in a hotel, for example, you can move a little bit out of the city, but the tube, the underground, connects there, and you can still have that London experience traveling from some outer cities from London. However, coming here, I haven't really found too many deals, to be honest, with exception being perhaps fruit and vegetables at local markets and fruit and vegetables that are sold locally in the street by some of the old people that set up makeshift stalls and sell their local produce. Outside of that, if I go to 7-Eleven, some of the supermarkets like E-Mart, for example, Lotte, are very expensive. And I'm talking about a box of cereal for $5 to $7 just for a box. It's not even a branded bit of cereal. You're looking at like $2 for just 1 liter of milk, $4 for a jar of jam. And some of these things are crazy. I've even seen these huge apples. I saw this box of these huge apples. It was $50 for 7 of them. I don't know what's special about the apple. A bunch of bananas was $6 just for about 8 bananas. And these are just average stores. And we've been to some cheaper supermarkets. There's one I do recommend, which is called No Brand, like no frills, no brand, no packaging. No label, sorry. So I have made a video on that. I'll try and remember to link it below. And that is like the cheap of the cheap. It's the Aldi and the Lidl of Europe. Very cheap. Perhaps the Dollar Tree of America, but with an essence of quality. But even in there, some of the things are very expensive. That being said, perhaps the groceries, the drinks and the food are expensive, but if you want to get a train, for example, it's actually quite cheap. So if I want to go from Incheon, where the airport is, or Busan, for example, and I want to go to Seoul, I'm going to pay 1,500 Korean won, which is just over $1 for a journey, which is very cheap. Because if you're in London, expect to pay for that distance. It could be Zone 1 to Zone 5, which could almost get you £5, which is around $7 just for one trip. So in comparison to London, for example, and let's not even talk about Las Vegas, because where are the trains there? Perhaps you would have to compare to New York, for example. But it's very easy to get around. The transit is cheap. The trains are usually on time. There's buses and lots of different things. So the transport is cheap, but the prices on grocery, eating out, restaurants, quite expensive. The next thing I want to talk about is maybe cleanliness, but really the root of all that must be respect. If I see things in public places, like things that could easily be destroyed, maybe a flower bed or something of that nature, people won't just get drunk and destroy it just for fun like they would do in London, for example. You can't really have nice things in the UK anymore. People either like to steal it, get drunk and damage it, even damage it while not drunk. So it's very hard to have nice things. That being said, walking around Korea, for example, I see people leaving their backpacks out. No one's taking them, no one's stealing them. One of our neighbors has his mobile phone in his cradle on his moped, and the moped is out in the street. It's there all night. He comes out in the morning, the phone is still there. He can just, turn the bike on, the phone comes on, and he can put his GPS in and go about his day. So it's quite interesting how I don't really see anyone stealing anything here. I see many clean things. I see very undamaged things. You could go out into the middle of a park over there, and there'll be things that could easily be damaged, graffitied on, sprayed. For example, when we were in Athens, people even graffitied on the cactus. The cacti could not survive. So it's quite nice coming to a city and you can see things that haven't been damaged. So it seems like people have more respect for their public things, their parks, their transit systems, and everything else. So the respect here is very good and very different to what I'm used to, actually, to be honest. It's very good. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about, which I already talked about, but I can't seem to find the video, is appearance and looks. Now, what I noticed my month being in South Korea was people focus on aesthetics a lot. If you go into, like a makeup store, these places are rammed. There's so many people in there. I'm talking about girls, I'm talking about guys as well. Beauty and physical appearance is number one. I don't know how long people spend on their makeup, but I imagine a very long time. And that seems to be a daily thing, very important. And a lot of time, effort and money go into that. So I imagine in situations where you're getting a job or trying to make friends, this could matter a lot. I have no idea. I wasn't part of that side of the culture. But it does seem like physical beauty is very highly regarded, which I found to be a little sad, to be honest. And I'm speaking very generally, but it seemed very superficial, and I wasn't really comfortable with that. But what I did find was the people that did speak to us and were friendly with us and were willing to hang out, go to dinner and have conversations, these types of people weren't in the main stereotype of beauty. It seemed they didn't really care as much, and therefore we were hanging out, having a good laugh. And it's one of those things. I mean, it's like you go to any country and the culture's always going to be different. You're always going to have exceptions. But the thing I did find out, that the people that put less time and effort into their physical appearance seem to have more personality to go along with that as well. Like I said, everything in this video is my opinion, and my opinion only of being 1 month in South Korea from a Western perspective. And not just South Korea, mainly just Seoul and the surrounding cities like Incheon, Busan, and everything else. I can't speak for Busan, I can't speak for rural areas, but this is my experience of having 1 month in South Korea. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I see you in another video coming soon. Take care. I'm doing some gardening today.